Ladies and gentlemen, developers and data enthusiasts, Assalamu alaikum and welcome with us. It's a pleasure to have you join us for the third talk of our DevFest series. I am Barkat Shiraz, a second year student at the Haya National School of Computer Science Algiers, and I'm honored to be your host today. In this session, we are set to unravel the details of data management, overview, trends, and innovation. Our guest speaker for today is a distinguished figure in the realm of data science, a professor in ESI Algiers with an illustrious career. Our speaker's research is dedicated to elevating data-driven decision-making processes. Her insights spans the domains of and unified data architecture, external data usage, and groundbreaking innovations with self-adaptive management. So, analyst or someone who's just curious about the future of data, this talk is designed for you. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to leave them in the comment for later discussion. And now, without any further delay, let's extend a warm welcome to our esteemed guest, Dr. Soumia Benkrid. Welcome with us, Doctor. It's such an honor to have you join us today.
Thank you for your presentation and thank you for, yes.
And
okay, thank you for
now
the
I will
presentation.
Go ahead, Doctor.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for the presentation, the consideration, and the invitation. Today, I'll present a talk about the data management and why data management. So often, when you search about data, we talk about data management, data pipeline, data mesh, data fabric, data pre-processing, data security, data governance, data master management. Then there is a lot of words and we need to have a big overview about these concepts. That's why today I present for you this presentation about the data management overview, trends, and the innovations. For that, I start with the presentation of the data management and why is it important. I give an overview about the key components of the data management. I present after the trends and innovation, and I finish with a point of view. When we define the data management, we talk about process, and this process is dedicated or is the practice. Why? Is a practice for collecting, organizing, protecting, and storing the data to make it available for decision maker. This process focuses on the data from the initial step, which is the collection, to the end step, which is the complete removal. Why we need to talk about data management? The data management is really important because the data management with a specific or with efficient data management strategy, we can maximize the use and the value of organizational data in a structural, governed, and the policy-driven manner. While also we can minimize the cost and the risk. When we talk about data management life cycle, we talk also, or it's a similar like the data life cycle, because when we talk about the data management, we are managing the data. If we do a search about this step, we find a lot of things. Sometimes we talk about 4 steps, 5 steps, 6. Here I'm presenting 8 steps. Why? Because we can be good that I prefer to go in depth of things. So the data is first generated by softwares or hardware. When we talk about the hardwares, we can imagine that we have an architecture of IoT. And the IoT sensors generate data. We have also the ability to get data from the operating informational system like the ERP, CRM, and others. Once the data is generated, we need to collect it. Collecting data means that we need to identify which data we need to use it for our data-driven process. Once the data is identified, we identify the data with 2 approaches. with the approach of I need all available data and I'll see after what I can do with it. Or we can have requirements of users, or in this case, we can talk about the business professional or the executive of the organization to answer to a specific requirements or business need. Once this data is identified, we need to extract this data and to transform it maybe, and after we store it. When we store this data, so often we talk about storage in a database. And in this case, we talk about two types of database. We have the SQL database or relational database and NoSQL databases. This data is stored and we need to do a processing. The processing of this data consists to identify, to do, for example, transformation or to create a machine learning model or other thing, or just store it or as data warehouse. This data is
اختي لي هذاك. I think that our speakers are is having issues with her connection. Waiting for her to join us again. Well, we are having connection issues. Please excuse us. Waiting for our guest to rejoin us again. We are working on contacting our guest. Please wait with us. We're sorry for the connection issue.
Hello.
Hello
Sorry,
again,
can you
Madeline.
hear me? Sorry. I repeat,
Well,
do
it
you
happens.
hear
It
anything
happens.
or nothing?
You started the presentation. We could hear the first slide with the overview. And then you
Okay,
had
and I
a
talked
connection.
alone for 10
Yeah,
minutes. Nice. Okay, I'll repeat
welcome
it.
back.
No problems. I'm really sorry because my phone is
No,
silent
it's
and
okay.
I didn't get the notification. Okay.
No, it's
Uh,
okay. It happens sometime.
okay, sorry. Let
Go ahead.
let's
Enlighten us. Continue,
thank
Matt.
you. So I'll start from the definition. Here we are talking about the data management. When we talk about the data management, we can define the data management as a process, and this process is for collecting, organizing, protecting, and storing the data. Why we need to do this is to make data available for analyzers and to improve or to have a decision-making system. When we talk about the data management is the process. Who cares about what? About the data from the initial state, which is generation or collection, to the end point, which is the removal of data. The data management process or managing the data is so important. Why? Because the
Sorry,
data
madam.
management. Sorry, you hear me?
Your screen is not being shared.
Okay.
Can you please share the screen with us?
Okay. Lots of problems.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't have this share screen. Okay. Screen. Is it okay now? Do you see my screen?
Still, yes.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, perfect.
So I said that the data management solution is crucial. Why? Because with the data management solution, we can maximize the use and the value of our data in structured, governed, and policy-driven manner. And also, we have the ability to minimize the risk and the cost of our architecture and the use of this data. Let's talk now about the data life cycle of the data management or the process of the data management, a conventional process. Here, if you try to read what I'm writing here as a subtitle, I'm talking about data life cycle, not data management life cycle, because it's similar. Data life cycle or data management life cycle, it's key similar. If you try to search about this topic, which is the data life cycle, we find a different process or life cycle. Sometimes we present things on 5 steps, 6 steps, 4 steps. Here I'm presenting for 8 steps. Why? Because we have the ability to regroup steps after that. I prefer to have a detailed approach. First, we start with the data. The data is generated by softwares or hardware. For example, when we talk about hardware, we have the ability to collect data, or the data is generated from the IoT sensors. And we have also the data that are generated from software, like the data generated by the ERP or the CRM systems. This data, when generated, we have the ability to collect this data. Why this data must be collected? The data is collected to answer to or to resolve some problem or to satisfy the requirements of the business. This is a business professional of the company. The data is collected. When we talk about the collection of data, it means that I'm not obliged to collect all available data, but I collect only the data needed to answer to our purpose. The data is collected. I need to store it. When I store the data, I can store this data under the relational database, which is SQL database, like Oracle, SQL Server, Postgres, MySQL, or I can store it also in NoSQL database. When we talk about NoSQL database, it means I have the ability to store under documents, graph, vector, or columnar database. Data is stored. Now I need to do a processing under this data. When we talk about the processing and for the data, it depends on the size of the data. If the data is really massive, in this case, so often we use in high performance computing, which means that we are obliged to use parallel processing. But if the data is not really massive, a simple processing can be used. The data is stored. We are doing some tasks under this data that what we need to manage this data. The word management here is not used to talk about the management, but it's similar to the maintenance. It means that I need to define the rules how to access the data, to protect the data, to create or to recover this data, and to focus on how to manage or ensure maintenance step. After, the purpose of all this process is to improve the decision making system. Then that's why we talk about the analysis and we try to analyze this data. For example, in this case, we can create an OLAP queue or prepare, for example, or do a machine learning model, identify or predict values, or edit some analysis reports. Once all these analyses are done, we need to visualize this result. The visualization of this result is so often done under a dashboard. And this dashboard, when we talk about dashboard, a dashboard is set of key KPI, which means the key performance indicator. Currently, we don't talk only about the visualization, which is tableau de bord or dashboard. We talk also about the interpretation, because if we when we talk about visualization, it means that I have a data, a tableau, then I need to represent this data as graph. But with the interpretation, we add some explanation. Here, for example, we can use the concept of data storytelling. Now, the data stored on the system must be distracted or archive, which means that we are not obliged to keep in our storage system all the data forever, but when we don't need the data, we need to archive, or in some case, we have the ability to distract completely this data, which means we remove it. So let's talk now about the data management component. When we talk about data management component, we can talk about the data governance. The data governance is, or what's the role of the data governance? Data governance is a process. We define a policy. This policy, or the role of this policy, is to produce a document that defines how an organization use and manage its data. It's making rules. Then it provides a big overview of all the rules and the responsibility related to the data governance in terms of access, security, quality, and access. So here, if we analyze this definition, we understand that the data governance is only a part of the data management. The role of the data governance is to plan, monitor, and enforce control for quality, security, and also the access. So here we are talking about quality. What does it mean, quality, before talking about the security? When we talk about data quality, it means that I have a data and I need to verify or check if this data is accurate, complete, relevant, and timely. To do this, we need to use or to identify some measures, which means that I need to identify some rules or some formula and to check if this data is accurate or not. For example, if for the age of a student, I can have the age 0 or under than let's say 16, for example. It's illogic. In this case, we need to identify some rules. That's why we have a process that we need to follow. Just here, I mentioned that when we talk about the data quality, we talk about the dimension we have in the literature. I suppose more than 10 dimensions. So often we use in the professional area 6 dimensions, and for this dimension, each dimension has a set of rules. Then I have the data. Here, if you try to read, I'm talking about data discovery. When we do data quality, we are not obliged to use the complete data, but we specify our study about some part of the data. We work on a sample, or we just work on the column attributes of the database that are used by the other steps like analysis or visualization, interpretation, or others. Once the data is identified, I need to do a profiling. Profiling means is that I need to check if this data is correct or not correct. To do so, we need to identify data rules. Once the data rules are identified, we need to monitor our system, because the data management, the data quality management is not a process only, but it's an ongoing process, because the system is everything alimented by data. Then we need to check the quality of the data for on offline before starting the projection of our system, but after we need to verify this data quality in continuous manner. Once the data or a problem on the quality of data is detected, we have the ability to correct it. And once we correct data, we edit some reports to identify or to explain what we did. Because when we have at the initial state some data and we change them, we need to have a trace about what we did, why we did, and how we correct this data. So if you try to analyze the process of data quality management, we can understand that it's really similar for the data management process, which consists to collect data, organize them, and use them after. So the data quality is really important. That's why we talk also about another component, which is the master data management. The master data management is a strategic approach to establish a single, consistent, and authoritative source of truth for the company. The data management consists to eliminate duplication and consistent data and ensure that all departments of the company have access to the same data. If we analyze this definition and we compare it with the data governance, it's a little bit or quite similar. The big difference, is that the data governance is about all data of the company. But here we are talking about master, which means that it's for only a part of data. And this data is the most important for the business process of the company. So the second step second component is the data integration. So we collect data. It means that we are working based on different data sources. We have different data sources that we need to have a big overview of this data. In other words, we need to merge them. We need to have the same semantic for all attributes. We need to have a big overview of all our data. That's why we talk so often about two types of data structure here, which is the data warehousing and data lake. When we talk about the data warehouse, it means that it's a top-down approach. We have the data sources. Based on these data sources and the requirements of the business professional, I identify a new database. The rule of this database is to have a unified view of all these data sources, and after I can use them. But we have also the ability to have data lake. The idea here is different. Then I have the data, I'll merge all this data together in a repository. After I use the data for other purpose. The big difference between the use of data lake and the data warehouse is about the users. If this repository is used by or is developed or designed to satisfy the need of the business and executive professional, data warehouse in this case is appropriate. But if this unified repository is created to be used by the data scientist, data engineer, data analyst, in this case, data lake is most appropriate. We defined the data management as the process that collect, organize, and protect data. If we talk about the protection of data, then it means that we talk about the data security. And the data security focus on two parts. The first part is about the security of data, security of access. I don't allow everyone to access the data, that I need to define rules. It's like when we manage data for database, there is not a big difference. And we have also the ability to manage what? To manage how to recover database, because the goal of the data management is to minimize the risk of losing data. Though so often the IT professional care about the access, the backup, and the how to define backups to restore data in case of problems. That's what I have to share with you about the overview. Let's talk now about the trends. The first trends is the big data. When we talk about big data, data is known, then the new word is big. When we add the big to data, it means that we need to evaluate this word. What is big in the data? And basically, we define 3V, which is volume, velocity, variety. It means that I have big volume of data, and this data is generated in fast manner. And this data, before talking about the big data, we worked only on structured data. But here we have a variety, which means that I work on raw data, structure, unstructured, and semi-structured data. After they conclude or that these 3V are insufficient, and they defined order. Currently, they talk about 9 or 10, but here I'm presenting the 8 most known, and they have really a sense for the big data. Then I present the 3 first. Then for the 4th, it's about veracity. When I select data, this data must be accurate. That it must be relevant also. I can't work or do something on data where the data quality is really poor. After, this data must be validated, that I have that data must have a meaning. And so often when we talk also about the data in the big data, it's about the data is volatile. The data change in a really fast manner. This data, when we collect data, we must have the ability to do what? To visualize this data. And the most important is to be able to translate or to convert this data to a value. Value here means that I need to have insight and the KPI for the company. I need to get something interesting for the company based on this data. It's a logic. If we collect data from different sources, we create a data lake, and we try to do something on this data. This data must give for the company something. We need an add value for the company. The second trend, it's about the cloud storage, and it's really evidence. Why? We have a big, massive volume of data. Managing this data on premise, it's really expensive. In terms of number of servers, in terms of maintenance, in terms of how to recover this data. Then in this case, it's better to delegate this task. That's why we here, what we delegate everything. It's like software as services. It's storage, management, and processing are used under the cloud. Why? It's cost effective, we have the flexibility, and also we can get the scalability in easy manner. The third trend is about the augmented data management. When we talk about data management, here we can talk about the trend and also innovation. We have two parts, and we can see things in two different views. Let's talk about the first one. We have AI, we have machine learning, and we try to automate the task of the data management using the power of AI and machine learning wise to improve the efficiency of our system. For example, here we can imagine that we can use AI to when we talk about the data quality. For example, when we talk about the data quality, I have the ability. I identify that I have a problem. That I have missed data. I can forecast. I can predict this missed data. I can detect the anomalies. I can detect all the outliers. I can forecast the future value. I can identify and tag also data. If we are talking, for example, about an analysis, sentiment analysis or emotion mining, data mining. In this case, the having ability to tag data in automatic manner is really important. So in this case, we are talking about the AI will improve the process, but also we can talk about augmented, where we unleash or we enhance the data. For example, we can improve the user or our analytics dashboard by adding some predicted values. So when we talk about the augmented data management system, we focus on how to automate the meta data management, how to improve the data quality, how to unify view of data, and also how to automate the master data management or model generated. Here I'm talking about metadata management. What is the metadata management? The metadata management is the data that describe data, and we need to have this data to the data governance. For example, when we talk about the data governance or master data management, the metadata management are really important, because in this step we have the ability to identify the data available, who is responsible about the data, who use this data, which process use the data, and everything about that. And here also we can use the AI to detect or to deduce this data in automatic manner. Hereafter, we have another trend, which is using the data operational. Data operational, it's when we talk about DevOps, it's about the agility of methods. But when we talk about the data management approaches are waterfall, which means that it's like a pipeline. It's not in agile manner. Then what we do with data ops integrates or implements the agile method to design, implementation, and manage the application. And it's really interesting to use them. Here I'm showing for you an example. When we design a data warehouse, for example, we have waterfall approach, which means that we need to identify the requirements. After we start the design of the whole data warehouse. After we start the implementation. When we talk about the deploying or designing a BI solution, it can take at least for 3 years, and really it's expensive in terms of time. That's why if we use an agile approach, for example, here I'm showing you how we adapt this approach. We can use a Scrum approach. We have the first sprint. It's before starting. Here we identify all the needed. We identify the analysis subjects, and we identify the technology that we need to use. After, for each subject, we start the development of each data mart. We develop the data mart one after other, and for each data mart developed, we deploy it, and we develop the part dedicated for it in the dashboard or analysis tool. So let's talk now about the innovations. Do you hear me? Is there a problem? I prefer to confirm. Okay, it works. Okay. So let's talk now about innovations. When we talk about innovation, we can distinguish 4 directions. We can talk about as data management it's really expensive approach or strategy in terms of development and deployment. That's why it's the innovation that is a part of companies that are working on self-service data management tools. They are also working about how to integrate the machine learning and AI with the data management in and also we talk about the data marketplace. Data marketplace, it's like database as services, which means that we have a marketplace and we have databases, example, and we can use them to deduce or to predict some values. And we have also the part of data lake warehouse, data fabric, and data mesh. Here we are talking about the architecture, and I'll explain this part. When we talk about the modern analytics, we need to identify what? We need to identify unified platform. When we talk about unified platform, which means that we have here a set of data sources. I have the stockholder, the actors, which is some business from the business and from the IT or the data specialist. I need to identify the environment. After, I need to have another layer about analytics. And the last one is about the use. The data governance consists to care about all these layers. And also when I deploy, I need to deploy the things and the infrastructure for others. Here, if we try to analyze, we find that there is a difference. What is data mesh and what is data lake house? I defined and I present what is data warehouse. Data warehouse is, I have structured data. I define an ETL, extract and transform this data, and I store this data on a data warehouse. These data are used by the BI tools and also to edit a set of reports. If I have structured and unstructured data, so often what we do, we create a data lake, and this data lake is used also to implement the data warehouse, and the data warehouse also has the ability to implement the data lake. The data warehouse is used for the BI and the editing report, and the data lake is used by the data engineer, data analyst, and the data scientist to create machine learning models and others AI solutions. What they did after this architecture is really expensive in terms of deployment and in terms of management. They said that we can implement or deploy the data warehouse under the data lake. Sometimes we call the data lake house like a pipeline. It's like a pipeline when you talk about machine learning in general. Here, we don't have the idea that we have data warehouse that is implemented and deployed. This architecture is really expensive in terms of what? In terms of access. Every resources of the analysis step must access on the data lake. That's why they propose what we call data mesh. Data mesh is an architecture. It's an overview to present or to deploy data management solution. Data mesh, it's a new approach of data architecture. It consists to identify a lot of domains, and it's the idea of defining the owner of data. This owner of data is not only owner of data, it's owner also of the data pipeline, the process, everything which is associated to the data. After he make this data as a protect for the others department. Then the domain specific data teams have also the ability to exchange. Here we are not separating the domains. No, we are creating data owner. Each one has his specific data, specific pipeline. He focus only on one domain. After we exchange with other as project, as a product, final product. We talk also about other thing, which is data fabric. When we talk about data fabric, what is it? What data fabric? Sometimes we call it like architecture. Sometimes we call it like technology. In my point of view, it's more a mindset and technology, which means that in traditional manner, what we have data source, we have data lake and data warehouse. We create a unified view, and we use it after to edit reports to create business intelligence tools in general. But here, what we do, we have an approach. In here, we can talk about specific tools. For example, we have Talent Data Fabric. We have some software. They are dedicated for this purpose, and we need to define a different layer to use them after. That's the definition what I was explaining. To conclude, so if we talk about data management means get it, fund it, rule it, work it, and leave it, which means that I need to identify the data that I need to work on. When I fund it, I need to discover and checking if this data can be used. It's like the 3V, the 8V that I explained for the big data. Before working on this data, I need to govern this data using some rules when they are talking about the data security and everything. After, I work on this data by identifying, writing code, building, or making data machine learning model. After we deploy this, what I'm explaining here is an explanation of the DevOps approach. And when we use the data management, we can improve our productivity, we can reduce the data management, it's cost effective, and we can manage our security, reduce the loss of the data, we can integrate the agility, and we can work in accurate data. It's really important to work on accurate data, because if I define a machine learning model based on dirty data, with data which is not correct, it means that my predicted data is not accurate also. That's why data management is the beating heart of not only AI system, but in my point of view, it's for all systems. Thanks for your attention, and I'm ready to answer to your questions. Do you hear me?
Yes, we are hearing you. Thank you so much, Madam, for your insightful presentation. We truly appreciate
I'm really sorry for the problem, and it was really intensive for me. I tried to talk a little bit fast.
Nah, it's okay. Thank you so much for sharing with us your valuable knowledge. I'm sure that me and the audience, we found it so helpful and useful. And now, if you allow, we may delve to the questions and answers.
Yes,
Let me see if there are any questions.
There are questions here. Comments?
Well, it seems that there are no questions. Everything was so clear. There are thank yous. Everyone, the audience is expressing their gratitude for you. Thank you so much. The presentation was so clear, was so helpful. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much. I'm so sorry for the problem, and I hope that the talk was useful for you. There is a lot of concepts, but the idea was, when we talk about data, there is a lot of mess about the words, and so often we feel there are a lot of buzzwords that I tried to make things clear about that. Thank you for your invitation and consideration all of that time. Thank you a lot. Thanks a lot.
Thank you so much, madam, for accepting our invitation and joining us today. Thank you.
Goodbye.
And now, as we reach the end of this session, I'll extend my gratitude to our attentive audience, and we invite you to join us on the second talk of today's DevFest series, starting at 8:15 p.m. It's by your presence and your curiosity what makes these sessions exceptional. Thank you once again, and waiting for you for the second talk. Assalamu alaikum. Good evening, everyone.